preacher! What's wrong with you?
He's not moving.
What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you, you nuts? What? What's wrong with you? What back off? This is a clergyman!
Get out of the
What's wrong with you?
You guys are the
This
ones
is a clergyman!
I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that detaining him any further, detaining him at first instance I thought was not necessary in the circumstances. This is a 49-year-old man who's never had any criminal charges, is expressing his point of view on a new and, unprecedented situation. For him to express his support vehemently, the Crown says is problematic and not only problematic but criminal. That's yet to be seen. And for him to be incarcerated for now 50 days, just seems so wrong in law. Obviously, the right decision has finally been made. I'm thrilled for that, and I think that's really where we need to be is with him released with his family.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News. Pastor Artur Pawlowski has been incarcerated for coming up on 50 days now for daring to attend the Coutts blockade as a pastor and for daring to preach words of encouragement to the folks down there. For that, apparently, in Alberta, you can be charged under the Critical Infrastructure Defence Act and charged with inciting mischief. Some of the folks down there who were actually blockading the border were not even charged under those same conditions. But apparently, Pastor Artur Pawlowski is public enemy number one, and any charges that can possibly be applied to him certainly will. So for preaching there, as a result of those two charges, he has been incarcerated for 50 days. He was actually denied bail on those charges earlier this month, and last month, in fact, and he was sitting in jail since that time, largely in solitary confinement, having an incredibly difficult time. Like I said, he was denied bail. Violent criminals and serial offenders are often granted bail, but not Pastor Artur Pawlowski. Well, Sarah Miller has been working tirelessly on Artur's legal defense with her team at JSS Barristers, thanks to your donations at saveartur.com. And last week on Friday, she successfully appealed that denial of bail, so Pastor Artur Pawlowski was granted bail on those terms. Unfortunately, there was other charges pending, contempt of court charges, and a number of health order charges still pending that had yet to be resolved before Pastor Artur could return home to his family. All of that stemming from Pastor Artur attending protests, opening his church, and ultimately feeding homeless people on the streets of Calgary in defiance of COVID-19 restrictions. Fortunately, we do have some good news, and I'm going to be joined by Sarah Miller in just a moment to discuss that, but it looks like the Crown and Artur's defense have come to terms to secure Artur's bail on those charges as well. So it is very likely that Pastor Artur will be home with his family this week on Wednesday. So very good news for the Pawlowski family. I'm going to speak now in just a moment with Sarah Miller to get an update on the successful bail appeal, as well as the plans for Pastor Artur going home.
Yeah, so like you said, it's under a publication ban, so I can't talk a lot about it, but what I can say is that ultimately Justice Kendall, she made the right decision and she released Artur Pawlowski from prison on the conditions that we proposed. So they are quite strict. This is not the full-blown celebratory type situation that we would hope for, because he is under very strict conditions, but certainly being under strict conditions at home with his family is a far better cry than being either at the Calgary Remand Center or the Edmonton Remand Center on charges where he's now got, as of tomorrow, 50 days of pre-trial custody, and we don't think he's, even if he was found guilty, that any judge would sentence him for that length of period. So it's ultimately a very good thing that he's now released.
So that's great, and ultimately we had that good news come out on Friday, but there was some sort of some loopholes to jump through. There were a series of other charges that basically came about either pre-existing or came about while Pastor Artur was incarcerated for these 50 days, and those terms had to be discussed, and we had to reach an agreement, or you had to reach an agreement with the Crown effectively on how bail could be granted on that. So tell us about that process.
Yeah, so the charges that we just dealt with bail on Friday on are the mischief charges arising out of Coutts. Since he was detained on those, he's received additional charges regarding breach of probation. And the probation, as some people will remember, arises from Justice Germain's order and probation related to the civil contempt. So there's allegations of that. They all predate the Coutts matter, but weren't laid until after he was detained. So of course then once you get release on the Mischief, we have to have release hearings on the probation. Now, it happened to work out really well as far as timing goes, because the order that was issued on Friday is now only taken effect this evening, essentially, I think it was about 4 p.m. that it actually was signed and filed and all of that. So tomorrow morning, he ends up spending an additional 12 hours in jail, maybe 16, whatever it ends up being. So it ends up not being too bad as far as timing goes. Of course, it would have been lovely if he was out today, but tomorrow my colleague is going to attend the bail hearing and enter into a consent release with the Crown prosecutor. So it was a brief and quick resolution with the Crown to get him released on those other charges.
Well, I'm sure Pastor Artur would have been happy to be out today. It is his birthday, but I'm sure the ruling that he will get to go home and be home with his family, a good birthday present, so to speak, for Pastor Artur Pawlowski. I just wanted to touch base, and I talked to Nathaniel and the family a bit about this, and I know that they've been upset. They felt like they've been targeted, and they were very happy to see what they saw as some sort of common sense from the courts. Like, no, he's not dangerous. He can go home. What's your sentiment? You've been working on this so closely. Obviously, you're close to these matters, but do you feel like there's been maybe a little bit more justice done here with Pastor Artur returning home to his family?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that detaining him any further, detaining him at first instance, I thought was not necessary in the circumstances. This is a 49-year-old man who's never had any criminal charges, is expressing his point of view on a new and, unprecedented situation. For him to express his support vehemently, the Crown says is problematic, and not only problematic, but criminal. That's yet to be seen. And for him to be incarcerated for now 50 days just seems so wrong in law. Obviously, the right decision has finally been made. I'm thrilled for that, and I think that's really where we need to be is with him released with his family. Now, I'm not thrilled about how strict the conditions are, but that's what has to be done in this current climate, in this current situation, and with the other outstanding criminal charges that remain pending with Mr. Pawlowski.
Now, as we kind of mentioned, this isn't he's free and everything is good to go. For people out there, we want to make clear Pastor Artur Pawlowski likely has years of legal battles ahead of him to address these matters. Pastor Artur will return home on Wednesday. He'll get to be with his family under these very strict conditions, largely staying at home aside from when he's serving as a pastor or doing the odd errand. Very strict measures in place. But what is the legal horizon like for Pastor Artur Pawlowski? What is ahead of him?
He has quite a few criminal trials coming up. So he's got some trials in October and November, and also a trial in June. So the trial in June is for the Public Health Act ticket that ordinarily for most people they saw $1,000 fines. The Crown is proceeding against him under the Public Health Act, a different procedure under the Public Health Act. So he's facing up to $100,000 for attending a gathering at the near the Olympic Plaza. Sorry, it's actually in front of community or City Hall. So we're facing that in June. He's got that ticket trial to do in June. There was no pay option with that, so most people who got ticketed under the Public Health Act for gathering in excess had $1,000 fine options presented to them. Mr. Pawlowski did not, so he'll have to deal with that trial in June. Then we have trials in October and November, and then this mischief charge will be scheduled when, hopefully on April 1st, this Friday, we'll have a date scheduled for that trial.
Well, thanks so much for this update. I know that it's a lot to get through, but I want to thank you so much. You're doing very important work, and it's great to see that Pastor Artur Pawlowski will be home with his family. Thanks again for taking time to give us this update. I know people out there love the legal updates. As you heard, Pastor Artur Pawlowski's battles are far from over. If you want to support his legal efforts and keep Sarah Miller and the team at JSS Barristers working to free Pastor Artur Pawlowski permanently, not just temporarily under strict conditions, you can do so by going to saveartur.com. Any donations you make there go to the Democracy Fund, a registered Canadian charity. So you'll receive a tax receipt for that donation, and those funds will be used to keep Sarah Miller working and to keep Pastor Artur out of jail. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Soos. While it is certainly good news that Pastor Artur Pawlowski is returning home to his family, he's simply returning home on bail under very strict conditions. He is far from free, and his legal battle still lies ahead of him. He will be in the courts likely for years, addressing the series, the veritable litany of charges that he is facing, and he simply could not continue to stand for his rights, stand for his freedom, and serve as a pastor without your support. He has made that clear to me time and time again, as is his family. If you want to support Pastor Artur Pawlowski's legal defense, you can do so, and you'll receive a tax receipt for your donation by going to saveartur.com. All those donations go to the Democracy Fund, a registered Canadian charity, and they are used to keep Sarah Miller and her team working to fight for Pastor Artur Pawlowski's freedom.